Karen, I have a question.
Another question?
Yes, can you please help us again with subject connected with education? I mean, we have children and
Mhm.
we have such a variety of many different types of schools. For example, Montessori or forest school, Waldorf school, social school, where my child should go to get the best education I can give him.
That's a really interesting question. And it's a tricky one because often we don't know, even if a school has a certain ethos or certain way of doing education, it's difficult to know whether it's going to be the best for them. I think it's important to really understand how your child learns.
Mm-hmm.
What is their primary learning styles, and we can do that in different ways. I know that quite early on, when my little girl was born, by the time she was like 1, I knew she loved books and reading and me telling her stories and words, and she's a communicator, a writer as well. And then my second one was born, and he's just so visual. He would squish my hand in a book. If I showed him a baby board book, he'd like squash it. And he just wanted to look. He didn't even want to look at pictures in a book. He wanted to look at real things.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went out in the buggy, he would see like tiny airplanes and birds in the sky and point and go, wow. And I couldn't hardly even see them. And then my third one was very kinesthetic, sensory motor learning. And so they were all like really, really different. And it really helps to know what their learning style is if you have a choice of a school and match it, because then if it works with the way that they love to learn, that's a starting point. Also, their personality, and an introvert might need a school where it's quieter. There's places outside, there's quiet spaces for them to go, maybe smaller classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't always have a choice in these things. Sometimes I think the best place for them to go is the easiest place for you to get them to, because a huge thing is just getting children to and from school, and how that can really be a large part of your life when they're young. And the easier it is, and the less stressful it is for you and for them, then that can be a big plus. So I think if I was going to choose a school, knowing what I know now, I would choose a school where the teacher is emotionally responsive to the child, to the children. She understands their emotions. She understands that each child is different. She has a way of, or he has a way of helping them to learn that suits their needs. They're aware of individuals, not
Mm-hmm.
just one whole class. So they have an individual focus on the children. I would also look, if possible, for a school that looks at the children's character. And more schools are doing this. They're looking at how can they nurture children's character within the classroom and the education. And obviously a Christian school, that should be, a strong part of their ethos. But I know schools that are not Christian schools that say character is the most important. We'll make it part of how we teach, part of our learning, part of our curriculum. Sometimes they might call it values.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very similar, the values and the character. Our children went to a school one time, a Christian school, a private Christian school on a farm of goats. And it was amazing. It was like a very homely place, not many children. The parents helped to teach as well to keep the cost down. And the wonderful thing was, when we got their report, the teacher had graded them on how they were showing the fruit of the Spirit in their lives. How joyful, peaceful. And I'm not exactly sure of that in a small child, but for me, it felt really lovely. This is what they're looking at. It's not just the education. They're thinking about their relationship with God. And that was precious. But we've done all sorts of education. We started off homeschooling for various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got incredibly ill and the children had to go to school. So we found them this private Christian school on a farm, which was absolutely delightful. And then we had to move, and the school in the village was just a normal village school with about 300 children. And then they went to secondary school. Some of them, we moved again, and the two youngest ones went to Adventist primary school. But my daughter was too old for primary school, so we put her in a Christian-based public school. And then eventually, when we moved to Scotland, our son went into a Christian-based private school because that was our only option. So we've done kind of every bit of school you can do, really. We were fortunate that they found the best school where they could thrive. And I think that's the important thing, where your children can thrive. And really, they learn best when they feel happy, when they're comfortable with the context, when they are enjoying it, when their emotional needs are taken care of, where they feel loved and treasured. And for me, that's the most important thing, that if you are stressed about the school or they are stressed, then that will interrupt their schooling seriously. So I think it's different for each one of us, and we have to look and see us, our children, our context, what's available to us, and do the best we can, because God understands that. And I know that when we do the best we can at home and we try to choose the best school that's available to us, then God blesses that. And we can do a lot of things at home, even if we're not teaching them as such. I think in terms of developing character in fun and positive ways, sharing faith in really healthy and positive ways, sharing a wonderful picture of God, giving them good social experiences, helping them to be kind, take care of others, maybe have a family mission project. If those things are all going alongside just a regular school, they will build your child up. They will become strengthened by that. So wherever we're sending them to school, we can do so much at home when we're aware, and we find joy in the learning together about God, and we find our mission project together. And particularly if you have a church that meets their needs too, that's very, understands children, is child focused, and provides opportunities, then because it's an all-round education, it's never just about school.
So what I heard is that you have chosen the best school that you could in the different places where you lived. Because, for example, why I am asking about this, because, for example, when I was a teenager, I used to live in a huge city, many different options of schools you could reach really easily. And now I live far away in the end of the city, in the end of the world. So from here, every single school, I had to take my son with a car because they are so far away. And it is really really easy for people who are living in the city say, oh, you should go to Montessori school. For example, for me, the closest Montessori school is really far away. So are there any basic principles for good education system for our child?
There's so many different ones. It's hard to say. And as we're speaking to people across Europe in different countries with many different ways of doing school, it's very hard to say. I would look for a school that has good reports from the government, if you have a choice, because they're being assessed. And I'd read that very carefully and see what they think is good and what they think is challenging. But schools change all the time. You only change one teacher or something else and everything can change. But it's good to read that, to pray about where to send your child, to go and visit the school and see how you feel. Sometimes you feel, this is right. Other times you feel, no, there's something here that I don't like so much. It's good if they show you around the school and you see different classrooms, different ages, how children are responding. Do people feel happy and safe there? And take your child, see what they like as well. They might have a preference for something or another. And it can be so personal. Sometimes it's the layout of the school. Sometimes it's the approach of a teacher. Are they welcoming? And how do they do discipline? What are their disciplinary principles? What are their values as a school? And often schools state those now. So I think it's good for you to decide what's important for you. And then look at the schools I know that when there's not an Adventist school, often a very good Christian school can be really good because they might be teaching something slightly different, but we can correct that at home. And that's not that hard to do.
Can you correct? I mean, I know families that are doing homeschool because they want to separate a child from every outside world because only parents can influence character of a child. So separation is, you are saying that you can correct something at home, but is it like that?
Yes, you absolutely can. You can, if you know what they're being taught at school, if you find out what the curriculum is, and you say, okay, they're going to be taught this, we can talk about it at home, and we can say, you know what, your school is going to talk about this topic, and that's interesting. They will tell something to you. And also, people have different ideas about this topic, and let's think about what we think about it too. Because that's really important when you go into the classroom, that you know what it is that we think about these things, and we talk about it at home. So I think when home has a strong, caring, positive influence, children are more likely to believe what their parents say than what school says. And if we can talk about it ahead of time, when it comes up at school, they're ready. And it might not be the best place for them to say, no, I don't believe that, and fight with the teacher. But you can just say, when you hear these things, just quietly remember what you learned at home and come and talk to us if you have any questions. So I think that can correct a number of things. And when you talked about in parents who are homeschooling, a lot of people can influence the character of a child, particularly when a school has character as part of its curriculum. And I would say if character is interesting to you, then go to a website called viacharacter.org, VIA character.org. And there is masses there on the 24 key character strengths. And there's a wonderful book called Celebrating Strengths by Jennifer Fox Eads. I will send you the link to put there. And this book truly inspired me. She's a Christian teacher who infuses the curriculum with character. And it's amazing. I was just so inspired. And also, I have done a webinar on nurturing characters for eternity, and you can find that on my website. We can link to that, or we can talk about that another week. Because I am so excited about what we as parents can do for character. But it's not just parents. Some of the people who shaped my character in my life, my parents were very influential, but it was Sabbath school teachers, pastors, my teachers at school had really powerful positive effect on my character, and to help me develop my gifts and strengths and affirm different things that they saw in me that my parents would have seen. So character can be influenced by many sources. And of course, parents are the core of that, but it can happen in all kinds of places. And when our children are at school, we can still work with the character at home and say, how did you develop your character today? You wanted to be courageous today. That was your plan. How are you courageous at school today? Or how were you creative or kind or patient or whatever? And so we can affirm that even if they're at school.
Okay, many parents, they are afraid that when they will go in between children with their own, they will catch immediately all the bad behaviors or thoughts or anything. And I was always thinking that when you as a Christian go into different group of people, you are like a light. You can shine there and you can bring something there, some values that they don't exist there. So, but we are using a child as our weapon, let's say. Should we separate the child, or should we put him outside to the world, or maybe in which age we should divide this?
I don't know that there's a specific age. I do know that it's very good for children to go and mingle with others. The influence at home on behavior and character and what they believe is much stronger than at school. Children need to learn to socialize with other children. I think they learn very good social skills when they spend time with adults. And I found that when we homeschooled our children, it helped them to become children who adults enjoyed being around. Because they interacted with us, and they learned positive things from us. They also learned positive things from interacting with other children. And yes, occasionally they might come home with a word you'd rather they didn't repeat, or some other kind of question. And that can happen. I think it's very important, though, to ensure that children are mingling with other children from whatever age you feel is appropriate or best for you, because it's different for all of us when a child should go into daycare or, kindergarten or school, depending on our own life circumstances. When I've seen children kept away from everything and just in a bubble, I found that they struggle. They really struggle. At some point, they have to move out of that bubble into the real world. And I found that the older they are when that happens, the more they struggle. It's kind of, I see it as being healthy for them to go to school young, bump into other kids, come home with questions, behaviors that we can process and talk through in a positive, gentle way. Like, okay, let's think about what you just said. And just know that those kind of words, like, they make the world more ugly, and we like to use words that make the world more beautiful. And in the Bible, it says, like, every word be a lovely gift, in Ephesians 4:29, I think. So I wonder how we can make our words lovely gifts and package them with joy and beauty, rather than use words that make the world an uglier place and hurt people. So it's thinking a positive way of how we can put across our values. I've also seen children who were homeschooled till they were 18, and then they went to university and they could not cope with it. They had not learned to kind of talk about their values with other children and young people, to stand up for them, to learn how to manage their own temptations and the different influences. And when they went out to university, they had nothing to help them deal with the situation, nothing to help manage and control their behavior. Suddenly they were free to do everything, and they didn't know what to do with all that freedom. They ended up drugs, sex, like everything every parent fears, alcohol. They just wanted to explore. So I think when some of those influences come when they're younger, and you're talking about things, talking about risks and risky behaviors and positive reasons why we keep away from these things, then they're better able to manage it when they go to university. Those things, those learning experiences, need to start as soon as possible. And this day and age, around 10, 11, 12, is when children are being exposed to all sorts of things. And if we help them then to make good choices, then that's built into their brain, their thinking, their system. But if they get to 18 and that hasn't happened, then they don't have a framework for managing these other things that they haven't encountered before. I think it's possible. I do know people who've homeschooled their children all the way through, and they're amazing, healthy, well-balanced. It needs a lot of conversation. It needs parents to talk these things through, maybe watch movies where these behaviors happen and talk about what you would do instead. It's easier in real life, but it is possible, but you need to be very intentional about making sure that they are equipped to deal with the real world and not just being kept in a bubble, just to keep them all pure and contained and nothing they shouldn't have and do and think. Because at some point you have to encounter a very real world out there and know how to manage it. So
are you against homeschool?
I'm not against homeschool. I loved it. When we did it, it was really happy time in our life, because you don't have to teach like all the hours that they go to school. I really enjoy being part of my children's learning, how to read, how to write. We'd go and explore. We'd learn in real life in all kinds of ways, from cooking and shopping and going to the zoo. And it was so rich. It was fabulous. And what that taught us was that everything you do in life can be an opportunity for learning and growing and enjoying. That was really good, because even when they had to go to school, we had that ethos that we learn together wherever we are, and we enjoy learning with them. We learned from them as we followed their interest in life. So one child liked bird watching, so we'd go bird watching with him and learn more about that. Another child appreciated music, and so we would go to music things, and we were enriched by their interests, and that was really, really, really helpful. I did plan to homeschool until at least 12 or 13 when they would go to high school, because I didn't feel equipped to teach the sorts of topics that my children were interested in. There was no way that I could teach them well enough what they were interested in, and I could see that very early on. If I had homeschooled all the way through, I would have been very intentional about having social interaction with other children, going along to clubs, and having opportunities to talk about these really important things, making sure they were well equipped, they hadn't been closeted away from the reality of life. You listen to the news, you talk about the issues, you hear about what the famous stars do, and how drugs and alcohol and other things ruin their lives, and find positive ways to equip them with the skills for living in a complex world with many temptations. And that can be challenging, it can be exciting. You need to be able to give it all you've got. And I think homeschooling can be incredibly an incredible load for parents on top of everything else. There's no space away from the children unless you can share it with others, which I think is ideal, that they learn from other people, not just you, and you come together in groups. So they have social interaction, and different kinds of teachers who teach in different kinds of ways.
In my life, we have made the same. We have organized 4 or 5 moms. We were a group of 4 or 5 moms that we were meeting regularly just to socialize our children. And it is really funny that people who are looking from outside, they are seeing just, oh, your child is not in kindergarten. Oh, yes, he's not there, but he's having his group and having fun. So this group socialize opportunities, they are so important. And we are encouraging you to create a group of, if you are not willing to go to school, or let your child go to school, not you, you create a group so he can gain those social skills that he needs to live in this world, let's say.
Yes, and I think that's very important, and also they can be practiced at home.
Yeah.
Because when we were homeschooling, I would encourage children to share with me. So if they had some sweets or a treat, it wasn't that I was trying to be selfish, but I knew they needed to learn how to share. So how will we do this? How will we share this together as a family? And I will share with them and they will share with me. So it's being intentional about what I want my child to learn, and practicing it and having fun doing that, and thinking about other social skills that are important. So sharing, particularly little children can't share very well, and that we shouldn't try to force it, because they think if they let someone share it, they're never going to see it again. It's just how they're wired. But as they get older, that's important. Even how to be kind to other people is really important. So if someone gets upset, how they can be kind, if they've upset them particularly, but being kind to others, seeing what they need, thinking about them, and even practicing that at home, being kind to me, kind to each other, how they talk about what they want in a positive way and their needs, how they deal with someone who's having an argument with them, how can they learn those skills too? Because we can teach children good conflict skills, good social skills, good listening skills really early on if we're intentional and practice it. And then they learn them from us in a really healthy way that they can then take into the social groups which they encounter and the other children. So we can be a huge part of helping them to develop really good social skills. And then they need a way to practice that in real life with other kids who might not have those skills. and then how do we talk through that not everyone is ready to do this just yet, you might say.
Yeah.
And they're still learning. But we can show them a good example.
And I think also when you have this picture of what behavior or what skills you want to teach your child, when you have this end in your mind, then dealing with today's situation, they give you totally different perspective. And a sock on the floor will not take your attention from the goal where you want to take your child. So it is really helpful to know where you want to reach with your raising child.
I think that's really important, that we're intentional about developing just even a positive list of what social skills and what do I want them to learn about God from me that's positive, what life skills do they need to learn, as they grow up in the home, basic life skills, managing money as they get older, maybe how to change a plug on something, or, technical life skills. My husband taught them. I taught them other things like how to sew on a button and cook an egg, these are all things. I can't tell you how many young people I encounter, perhaps in premarital or other experiences, and I realize they do not have some basic life skills. And when my son went to university, and my youngest one, he was horrified by the life skills or lack of life skills that many of his friends had. And some of them had like maids, and they just dropped things on the floor and expected the pickup fairy to clear it all up at the end of the day. And my son was like, he's the tidy mind, and he would say, you can't just drop that back there. That's not for anyone to pick up. That's your job now, and they'd be really shocked. In fact, some of them wouldn't live with him the next year because he would just say, that's inappropriate, that's unacceptable.
But I think those skills, they don't have time to learn them. I mean, when you go to school, and this is something that makes also parents terrified, that when you go to school, then after school you have some extra classes like swimming or English or sewing, maybe, I don't know, like anything. And then you are coming back home at 5, or a child is coming back home, and then he had to do his homework, and there is no time for teaching how to cook, for example, because there's only school and those classes and homework. So when there is time to teach, or maybe to get rid of the extra classes?
I do think some children have too many extra classes, and if they need them because parents are working, then that's a good way to take care of them. Those extra classes can be teaching them lots of skills too, like sewing or music, sport, English. They're all really important things. And we don't have to spend a lot of time teaching them life skills. What we would just do is like, I'm in the kitchen, hey, come and help me make a cake. Let's do this together. And maybe at the weekend. And they used to help me make the desserts for Sabbath, and they loved to do that. So that was something we would do on Thursday night. And when my husband was hammering in a nail or doing something, he'd say, hey, come and hold this for me, and I'll show you what I'm doing here. And then he would give them a chance. So we didn't like go out of our way to teach. We just used teaching opportunities that happened around the house. Oh, we just got a new piece of furniture from a very large store in Sweden. Let's see how we put it together and how to follow the instructions and how we do this, because it's an important life skill. And so we would do them alongside, and they would come and help, and they loved it. And now they're equipped for life. They have skills that are really important. And we just talked about what we did as well. We didn't always have to teach. We would talk about how we were like saving money in different ways and being economical and wise with our money. And our daughter, she's a stay-at-home mum for a while, and she thought, well, I need to know how I can save some money because I'm not working. How can I contribute by being like, economical and thrifty? And she found this book about it, and she said, you know what, Mum, I learned all this from you guys. I learned all the skills this book is telling me just from living with you and how you managed your life, that you would get basic things from charity shops and other things like that, and find good deals and bargains and make things yourself and mend things. And so they just learn a lot from being with us when we're just aware that everything can be a teaching opportunity, which I think is what we learned when we homeschooled for a bit. Everything is a possibility to teach, and the important thing is to make it fun.
I have read something really nice. Do you know how to spell love?
Well, I know one way, but I'm sure you have another way.
I have. Look. Oh, wait. It won't be seen. It's time. Yeah. When I read this, it was like, it's so good that when you spend time you have together, you have the opportunity to show your love, to teach, and to just be together. So to get connection, to explain the world, to explain what have happened in school, for example, everything, just spend time together. It's so important.
It is. And we used to talk about the day around dinner. We all used to eat together. And that was very, very important that we could eat together and debrief the things that are happening, the news, what happened at school, share the funny things, the sad things, the frightening things, talk about what we learned, what we're doing. And those times are so important. They know now that that really helps build resilience and protects children against risky behaviors in their teenage years, to have those meal times with parents and everyone together.
So I would say that we should not be afraid to let our children go to school.
I agree. We should not be afraid to let them go to school. It's part of an important part of life. It can be very beneficial for them. And it's putting it in a frame and saying, what might be missing at school? How can we fill it in at home? And also for teaching at home, what can we do at home? What's missing that we might need to go and do with the children? They join an orchestra, they go to swimming, they have a social group, they go to Pathfinders, so that we can fill in the gaps. And when we're intentional about what we want them to learn for life, that's important for life, then we can be intentional about making sure that we give them as broad an education as we can and provide a lot of opportunities, particularly for them to find out what they're passionate about. You know, is it like birds like my son? Is it books like my daughter, or music, or sport, or science, or whatever? Help them to find their passion and go with their flow, rather than saying, well, you ought to learn the piano, so you're going to have piano lessons and you need to do this. Follow their flow, because when they enjoy it and they're doing it because they want to, it's so enriching for them and for you as well. And out of that, they will find their purpose in life. They will find something to do that brings them joy. And I remember my parents saying to me, you know, obviously we want you to do your best at school, do your best. And as long as you're doing your best, it's no problem to us if it's not, you know, 100%. And when I was looking for work and study for what I would do when I left school, they said, you know what, the most important thing for us is that you find something that makes you happy. And that was such a lovely thing for them to say, because then and they helped me to do that. Because they provided a lot of opportunities around me, I knew what made me happy, and I could follow that. And also I saw them take really good care of others. My mother is incredibly kind. She was always doing kind things and taking me with her. And I learned the joy of kindness, like just from going with her and seeing people's faces and seeing how much joy it brought her. And as a very small child, we lived in Africa, and we lived on a hospital mission compound in Africa, where my father was the head nurse and my uncle and aunt were the doctors. And there I had experience of another culture, of my parents really going out of their way to care for people who had no one else to care for them. And those things are very transformative. What you learn as a child really shaped me. I even remember having a sense of injustice as a 3-year-old when I was in Ghana. And someone gave me a position of privilege as a 3-year-old, and they took a lower position. And I remember thinking, that is so wrong. I mean, they should be here and I should be there. There was no reason why I should be like special. And that was, I think, for me, quite a surprising thing, I would think, as a 3-year-old. But those experiences, they stretched my mind and gave me new perspectives on the world. And we can do that just by taking our kids on a mission trip, or, you know, showing them when we're doing kind things for the community, take them along. And these things can all enrich and develop their character and make them go, yes, I want to do that. So, yes, our experience with them is very powerful. I think for me, the key thing is, whatever we're teaching, may they enjoy it. If they're not enjoying it, we need to think why, and do we need to change something to make it more enjoyable, or do they need to stop doing that thing and think of something they would rather do instead? Particularly if it's extracurricular.
Last question then. Can you tell us if there are any like a red sign that we should really pay attention or change something or go to school? What are the red signs that something is going on with our child?
There's lots of those, I think, and it will depend on the child because they all express themselves differently. I think a child who starts to get stomach aches is
Mm-hmm.
often an anxiety. It's not a physical sickness. And if they start to get stomach aches, if they don't want to go to school, if they come home really sad, if they come home and their behavior becomes out of control, if you know that they're being bullied,
Mm-hmm.
if they really if the teacher is doing something unkind, and sometimes the teachers don't realize different children are different, and they might say something, and we all have days when things don't go smoothly. It's if it's a consistent pattern. I think it's also really important at the end of the day. Often children who say, "What happened at school?" and they're like, "Oh, nothing." But when you say things at dinner time, like, "Tell me the happiest moment of your day. Tell me this when you're most sad. I want to know when you're most sad." And you comfort that. You
Mm-hmm.
celebrate the happy moment and go, "Yay, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. I'm glad that went well." The sad thing, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened." Don't defend the teacher. Don't argue it away. Just listen to their sad story and comfort it and say, "I'm so sorry that happened. What can I do to help you to feel better? And what would you like me to do to help you going forward?"
Mm-hmm.
And also ask, "Did anything at school make you feel frightened today?"
Mm-hmm. That's a
Um,
very good question.
yes, because often we don't ask that and they don't know how to tell us.
Mm-hmm.
So something extremely frightening happened to me in my first class at school. I'd only been going to school a few weeks, and I was only 4 because that's when you started school in England. And I had a teacher who was incredibly cruel. She was emotionally abusive. And she did something so terrible and shaming for me that I felt like the children in my class would never like me. They'd never want to play with me. I hated school. I dreaded it. And when I went to school with my mum walking, I would cling to lampposts so that she couldn't, and she'd have to peel me off the lamppost. And she was crying because she knew I didn't like school. I was crying. I don't think I actually was able to tell her what had happened. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have words for what happened. But she knew I didn't like it. And that needed to be addressed. And it was complicated. But eventually I went to another school and started to heal again. And
Mm-hmm.
actually think school was nice. But I became quite school phobic. So I think it's watching for your children's behavior, how they feel about school, how they come home, what are their emotions, talk to them and let them know it's okay to talk about what happened, whatever happened. Even if it was something shameful and they don't want to tell you, it's helpful if you can help them feel safe enough to talk about it, and not defend the teacher, but just comfort their emotions and help them think the best way to go forward.
I would add here that we were discussing this earlier in previous episodes, that when you are honest with your child and when you say about your mistakes or failures, they are more willing to tell about their stories, but you
Yeah.
have to be honest as well in the
Yeah,
first
yes, I
place.
think that's really important, this honesty. So that home becomes a safe place to talk about the difficult things out there, whatever age of child,
Mhm.
whatever kind of education they're in. We need to be able to talk, and they need to know. We often need to give them child-friendly information about abuse and
Mhm.
how to protect yourself, and how to come and tell if something troubles you or someone does something you don't like. You always come and tell us, and no matter what that person said to you about telling us, we will keep you safe. This will
Mhm.
happen. We will keep you safe, because sometimes they'll say, if you tell anybody, I'll hurt your parents, and so they feel they can't talk. So any child, I think, that's sad, struggling to manage their behavior, clingy, having tummy aches, they're all signs that something is really troubling them. And don't think first about punishing them when they behave badly, when you know that when they could be sad, but listen first to the sadness and comfort that, because then the behavior will follow.
That,
Sometimes it's the only way to tell us that they're struggling.
that's so important.
Mm.
Thank you. I will summarize the things that we were saying. Maybe you can add something here. We said that we should be intentional. That the bubble, no, but the school or social home education, yes. Follow child interest with these additional classes, and go in person to schools or to places where your child will be signed in, because you will feel the atmosphere, you will feel the you will get to know the teachers, so you will know if you like it or not. It is very helpful. And then connection, time, and love.
Yes, they're all very important.
Thank you very much for your for sharing your knowledge. And I would like, as usual, finish with a text from Philippians 4:11 and make this our goal. It is written, I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. So if you have school close, if you have to go far away, if this is Montessori, English, Bible, or Christian, or a forest school, just be content whenever you go and are, and help your child to get as much as they can to build their character in life.
Yes, yes.
Karen, may I ask you for a closing prayer?
Yes. Father God, we want to thank you that you're such a loving Father. And all through our lives, you have been teaching us in all kinds of circumstances. You can reach us wherever we are, and you make the most with the Holy Spirit of teachable moments in our lives to grow us where we've grown today. Help us to keep learning, to keep listening to the Holy Spirit and keep growing. And as we do that, may we also come alongside our children to help them learn and grow, to focus on their needs and the different ways that you have made them and created them, because they're all so unique, and help us to help them realize they are precious and special, to find ways to make their learning positive and enjoyable, to help shape their characters in fun and exciting ways, to grow them up to love you and to love others, the most important things. This is an incredible opportunity for every parent. It's a wonderful thing that you have entrusted to us. It's challenging at times, and we need your help. And we know that you will always give us wisdom when we ask you. So we put all of our children, our educational plans, all of their characters, all of your love, and together and say, help us, teach us, so that we can humbly learn from you how to humbly teach our children and guide them through Jesus' name. Amen.